101 panel. Have a seat, and we'll get started. So welcome. We're just going to do quick introductions for ourselves.
Okay, hi, I'm AJ. Is this working? I got you. Okay.
I thought it was on.
Mine is working.
That sounds like
No,
I think we can share.
okay.
it's a wireless. Just pull it out.
Okay, I'm AJ, and I've been cosplaying since 2002, probably longer than some of you guys have been alive. We just wanted to post photos of like our very first costume, and then a couple years later or more recent, and to show you just it only takes a couple years to pick up a lot more skills. Okay.
And I'm Cheryl. I started cosplaying in 2003. I'm a graphic designer by trade. Just FYI, none of us are professionals. We're all hobbyists. Yeah, first costume was Pain from Final Fantasy X-2.
Hi, I'm Judy, and I've been cosplaying since 1999, definitely longer than most of you have been alive. And I work at a bank. Woohoo! So this is what I do for fun. This is what we all do for fun. This is where money goes. Money doesn't come from. But the first photo is from Fanime, 2001 or so? Yeah. And look at visible badge, bad idea. Tennis shoes, bad idea. And the last one is from the Disney convention a couple years ago. So, okay. And we are in a group called HCC Cosplay. And it is essentially a group of friends. We started cosplaying together in 2003. And we do this for fun and wacky hijinks, and much ensues. So we'd like to get started about what is cosplay. A lot of people ask what it is, what it means, and they tell you the rules of cosplay. There's only one rule, and it's have fun. Don't be a jerk. Cosplay can be anything. It's essentially wearing a costume.
We're just going over what we're talking about.
Oh, well, then I'm going to hear. Okay. Okay, sorry. We're going to talk about. Sorry, there was a table of contents I forgot about. So ignore what I just said about what is cosplay. We're going to talk about how to pick a costume, whether you should make or buy it, proportioning. Yes, math is important. Your teacher always says you'll need math later. You actually do. Choosing materials, tips for construction, tips for wearing, makeup, and then a little quick question and answer session. So.
All right. So what is cosplay? At its core, cosplay is just basically dressing up. That's it. The fundamental part of it is just to have fun. You can dress up as anything from video games, anime, cartoons, movies, books. We've seen cosplay of memes. Basically anything that you like. It's a way to just show off your fandom. But really, that's ultimately you just want to have fun with it.
Okay, now rules of cosplay. Sorry, I can't read. So the most important people like, oh, you have to make your costume. No, you don't. You can buy it. eBay is a great resource. The quality might be a little interesting, but you can do whatever you want. This is your hobby, and you should have fun with it the way you want. If you want to buy the whole thing or buy pieces of it, that's great. This is all about having fun. You don't need to be the same shape, gender, race, blood type, that was a thing for a while, as the cosplayer. As the character. Whatever you enjoy, if you like the character, if you like the show, if you just like the design of the character, feel free, cosplay it, have a great time. The important part is obey public nudity laws and don't have drippy stuff on your costume. Those are the important parts. After that, anything goes. Have fun. So cosplay isn't necessarily role-playing. You don't have to be the character all day. There's always some Deadpools that are kind of, fun, but then they get a little creepy. But for the most part, people are just like, hey, I like the costume. If you want to role-play, great. If you don't, that's fine. I never do. I feel really awkward because I'm like, hi, I work at a bank and really I'm a pretty princess, swear, hi. So, but whatever's fun to you, if it's role-playing is fun, that's great too. And whatever you find in cosplay that makes you happy, that makes this a fun hobby for you, that's why you should do it. For me, it's all about figuring out how to make the costume. The actual making and wearing of it, not that important. Like, oh, people want your photo. That's nice. But I like sitting in my garage, you know, in the Home Depot shopping list, trying to figure out how to make it. That's what I find the funnest about it. And that's fine. Whatever is fun for you, if it's getting all the photos and having people run after you, that's fine too. It's all about having fun. Okay, how you pick a costume. I think the most important part is budget. How much time and money do I have to dedicate to this hobby? You know, you want to be happy with what you're doing and what the final result is. And if you want to make a working, flying, you know, Iron Man costume and your budget is $25, you're probably not going to be happy with the end result. But if you do the Mr. Roboto cardboard box version of Iron Man, you're going to look awesome and everyone will be really impressed and you'll stay within your budget. So you should think about how much time you have. A lot of things you can make up for money by putting a lot of time into it. Like we know this guy who makes amazing Transformer costumes out of stuff from the dollar store. But it takes him forever to find all the trash can sizes he needs. So he spends a huge amount of time at it, but it costs him much less money. Your skill level, yet again, working Iron Man, maybe not your first costume. You know, kind of work your way up to that. Like I started out making Halloween costumes for myself when I was in like 4th grade, and they were really sad, involved a lot of glue, and they usually came apart. But you know, it was appropriate for my skill level. So, and I had a lot of fun doing it. And what's your comfort level with the techniques you're using and the difficulty of the costume, and the event. So, if you're going to a Star Wars event, maybe not Elmo.
I mean, you can do it.
You can do it.
Like Jedi Elmo.
But there's going to be a lot of wrong convention comments, you know. But, you know, like this is a, you know, family-friendly event. You know, we chose family-friendly things to do. You know, we're not going to be necessarily walking around in, well, I wouldn't be walking around in a bikini anyway, but, you know, it's like we look at the event and see what will go over well. You know, is it going to be hot? Is it going to be crowded? Should I wear 6-foot wingspan in the stacks where there's like a 4-foot wide stacks? So it won't work out so well. So, do you love the character? Do you love the series? You know, what about it is driving you to do this particular character?
All right, we're going to talk about making versus buying. So there's a big rule that you can use for a bunch of things. This involves cosplay as well as anything else. Good, fast, and cheap. Pick 2, because you're never going to get all 3. And if you try, you're going to probably give yourself more of a headache than anything else. So when you're thinking about what you want to make, consider these 3 things and be like, all right, do you want it fast and good, or do you want it fast and cheap, or good and cheap, etc. So keep that in mind while you're thinking about what you want to make. So this is a good example. Because cosplay has gotten so much bigger now, a lot of characters have become really, really easy to find to buy. And so it's basically up to you. Do you want to take the challenge on of making it yourself, or would you rather just kind of go like, well, I'm only going to wear this in the hall, and this is like a really casual thing, so maybe I'll just buy it. So the example here is Chun-Li, super popular character. Spirit Halloween has its own version, obviously, which is the one furthest left. Yeah. And probably made from kind of really cheap material, maybe wouldn't hold up so well if you washed it, you know. eBay also has a bunch of versions that you can find that are slightly more accurate, probably has a better material quality, but not by much. And then there's a version that I made, which obviously fits me like perfectly. Something to consider when you're deciding between making and buying is like, if you have a non-standard figure, you're probably going to want to drift towards making it yourself, because obviously with commercially available patterns and commercially available clothing, there's things that aren't going to fit you the same way. So it's something to consider, and because of the popularity of cosplay, you'd be amazed at like what characters are available. Stuff that's popular in Asia, maybe not so popular here, but if you find like an anime character that you're really, really into, that maybe you're like, I don't know if that would be popular, Google it. You'd be surprised what's available online. So buying is always an option, and again, there's no judgment. The cosplay is about having fun, so just do what makes you happy. So buying tips. In this example, AJ actually bought the costume itself off eBay, and then we made the helm, and she styled the wig on her own. So things to consider when you're buying is check the seller reviews and photos, especially with eBay. They tend to share photos, and sometimes they'll grab photos from other sites.
Or cosplayers.
Yeah, so check the reviews for sure. And even when you're checking sellers online, like there's sites like cosplaymagic.com or mikecostumes.com, Google like the name of the store and reviews, and to see like what people have experienced when they've purchased it, because what they see on the photos not necessarily translates to what you get when you buy it. Another thing to consider is eBaying and thrifting used clothing. So, for instance, if you wanted to do a schoolgirl and you needed like a pleated skirt and you didn't really want to make it, Google pleated skirt on eBay or on Etsy, and you can find a used version that you could possibly modify. Another option is to commission a seamstress or a tailor. If it's something commercially available, like if it's just a pattern that you found at Joann's and you just need someone to make it for you, there's probably a local seamstress near you or a tailor that can probably make it for you with just buying the materials. For more complex costumes, you can find actual cosplayers who commission their work. It'll be really expensive. It'll probably take a little bit much longer than maybe you anticipate, but it'll be something that's like, this is like historical or quality stuff that you can keep forever. And you'd be amazed like what people will say, like, yeah, I can make that for you. You just need to give me X amount of time and X amount of dollars. Etsy is a big resource for it. You can find patterns on Etsy. People are 3D printing objects from video games and anime. If you need a prop, you can find stuff that you can buy from them. Patterns too. And patterns as well. Yeah, people are making cosplay patterns on Etsy for characters that you find. So if you think about like something you want to make, but you don't see a pattern that's really close to it, commercially available, try Etsy as well. And then a big thing that we like to do too is buying and modifying.
These are just some examples, especially for kids, because kids grow so fast. It is so not worth it to make it for them. So like the Leia is actually the store-bought one. I just made a couple modifications, like I put in a waistband to help her like get that little blousey look, and I remade the belt because the belt was really kind of awful. I used fun foam, that foam stuff. And then like the Ewok is just a bear costume that I took the little bow off of, and then I made a little hood. It's just much, especially for little kids. Just go. They have so many great costumes now that you can buy. The one on the right is I was just doing this character and I didn't feel like making a sweatshirt, so I went to Target and I bought a giant hoodie with a zipper and I cut the sleeves off. And then I did. You can get iron-on print decals. Like you print them out on your printer and you just iron them onto your clothing, and that's how I did the little blocks. So just modifying stuff from Target, thrift store. Totally awesome. Okay, proportions. So,
math.
Okay. Okay, so this is a big one for us. Proportions are a big deal. You want to go next slide? Yeah. Because especially for, say, anime characters where the proportions are very unrealistic, it helps a lot to do the math to get the proportions right on you. Within reason. Like, you're not going to get the Sailor Moon legs that are like 3/4 your body. Okay, that's not going to happen. So, within reason. But proportions matter a lot because if you don't get the proportions right, you're not going to look like the character. So here are two of our examples. So that's Judy on the left as Gimli. And obviously, she's not John Rhys Davies shaped. Like, he's like 6 feet tall or something like that. And on top of it, he's a guy. So things like his waist is lower than a girl's is. So what she did was she did the math to figure out where his waist would be on her, and that's where she put her belt. And that kind of stuff matters, because if you put the belt where your waist is, it's not going to look right, because you see how low his waist is, right? And then you can do it for things like on the right, the armor. I basically did the math for what her breastplate would look like on me, and then I did all the math here. And I drew out the patterns. Okay, so this is that cross-multiply thing they teach you in algebra. And,
ninth grade?
Oh,
wow.
It's been a while since we've been to school, but thank you.
Excel will do it for you for the adults, just FYI.
So basically, you take your reference art, and then you decide how big you want it to be on you. So, take a constant. So like on me, I was like, okay, top of my boobs are here, bottom is there, and it's gonna be 21 inches. And then I measured how long my art was, and I did the little cross multiply thing, and that's how I ended up with how big each one of these pieces were gonna be. You can do it really simply too, where like you print out a reference photo and then you print out a photo of yourself at the same size and you put them next to each other and you draw lines across. And that way you'll know where the shirt stops, where the buckle, where the knee plates are or whatever, where your belt is. So you can do it without actually doing the math too. But,
yeah, it's like how big and how tall to make this bow. I based it on the reference art's face compared to my face of how big to make the bow.
Yeah. So. And art changes in like every frame, so just get close.
No one's going to take a ruler to your costume in check.
So we have this formula on our website, so you don't have to frantically write it down, but it's essentially just solve for X proportion.
We have the website at the end.
Yeah.
Okay. Choosing materials. Now you've decided what costume you're going to make. You got your sizing, and you know how big you're going to make everything. You're going to go out and buy materials. This is for fabric costumes. We're going to start there. So just when you're walking through the store, you got to look for a couple things other than, is it the right color? Because sometimes, is it the right color is the thing that matters the most, but you got to check out some other things. Does it, like, what kind of material? Is it really thin? Is it going to wrinkle easily? Try to stay away from stuff that wrinkles really easily because it doesn't look very good when it's rumply. Does it breathe? Are you going to a con like in San Diego? Like, try not to do polyester. I mean, not that you can't, but it's going to be kind of miserable. Is it the right weight? Like, look at what you're making. If you're making something that is a suit or a uniform, don't pick something that's too light because that's not what they make it out of for real, right? It's not going to look right. Is it see-through? That's a big one, right? If it's see-through, and sometimes you have no choice, make sure you wear a bodysuit underneath or a leotard or something to hide. And again, is it the right material? I mean, the example here is that on the right is like one of my first Halloween costumes, and it had to be dyed, and I picked like a polyester, and polyester doesn't dye, and it looks awful. Okay, so like if I'd been smart and I'd have picked a cotton. But I didn't know at the time. So cotton, natural stuff dyes better. Cotton, wool, linen, those dye better. On the left, this is an example of what you do when you have to make it work. These are based on theater costumes in Japan, and they chose that sequin dot material that's like super thin that they sell at Joann's at Halloween. No one makes anything out of it. Who makes stuff out of that, right?
Yeah, you can totally see right through it. And the dots are held on with glue, so it totally.
So we actually backed the material with a solid fabric so that we could actually wear it because it's too flimsy to make a suit out of and it's see-through. So that's how we made it work.
Oh, and for everyone who's local, we get most of our fabrics at Fabrics R Us over on Berryessa. Great place, really cheap, has lots of choices. So.
Okay, so now that you've got your material and roughly your sizing, how do you make it work? Okay, so there are a million there's a lot of cosplay patterns out there right now, which is amazing. So hopefully you'll be able to find something that's close to what you want, but it might not be exact. So how do you get around that? We do what's called muslining, which means you take a cheap material, which is that muslin, which is that cheap cotton that's like, get a half off, it's like 99 cents a yard, and we make a mock-up. We make like a test run. And then we get our favorite cosplay tool, your friend, and you have them come and you check the fit on you. And then they draw in any lines that you need, like where you want to put in seam lines. So this is for an officer uniform. I took like a basic suit jacket, and then I had Judy draw the lines on there that show like where I'm going to be putting in a seam because that was not on the original jacket. And then she has like little notes like, add an inch here, and your sleeves my sleeves were too low on the side. You can do, I've done costumes where I've done like 3 or 4 test runs in test material before going to the final fabric because your final fabric is also probably kind of pricey or pricier. Better to do all your test runs on the cheap stuff. And then you can take apart your muslin and use that as your pattern.
So the big thing nowadays, if you guys see the big armor costumes that are walking around and on the internet, are thermoplastics and foam. Thermoplastic is basically a plastic that you can heat up and shape. The big one, the very popular one right now, is called Warbler. That's the example on the left, which is by a cosplayer that goes by Kamui Cosplay. She does amazing stuff. Have a seat. She does amazing stuff with armor, and you can heat it up with a blow dryer. It's super forgiving. If you mess up, you can heat it up again and reform it. But all it is basically, it looks like, it comes in these sheets. You can buy it at Tap Plastics, which is local, and you can buy it online as well. It's really good for super detailed armor projects. And the thing you want to keep in mind with both of these materials is that they're semi-toxic. So if you're going to work with these and you start heating them up, be in a well-ventilated area. It can get you sick because of the fumes. So working in a garage, have all your windows open, be mindful of that. Another big thing that's being used is EVA foam, which is basically floor mats and yoga mats and craft foam. It's all the same stuff. And that stuff you can heat, you can shape, you can carve, you can Dremel, you can sand, you can prime, paint, all of it. The really good thing about it is that it's super, super lightweight. So when you see these big robot armor costumes from like World of Warcraft or whatever, it's usually made out of EVA foam because the weight of it is really, really, really lightweight. There are a ton of tutorials for both of these materials online. So if you're interested in something that you're like, oh, there's this character that I've seen that is armor-based, Google it. There's a bunch of YouTube videos. The Kamui Cosplay in general, she is really good about documenting her process with stuff. So on Instagram, on YouTube, on her website, she'll say like, here's how I made this gauntlet, here's how I made this chest plate, stuff like that. And another good resource, if you guys have the Sci-Fi Channel or On Demand, they had a show earlier this year called Cosplay Melee, and a lot of their stuff is done with EVA foam. Granted, they're really, really good, so don't expect to be as fast as they are, but if you want to see stuff like as they go, like, you know, I'm taking a drill and doing this, and it's like, that's a really good way to introduce yourself to how EVA foam as well as Worbla work together. And you can use these in tandem with each other. You can take EVA foam, cover it with Worbla to make something a little bit more structurally rigid. Things to keep in mind with both too is that because they're both heat activated, don't stand outside in the sun for way too long. Don't leave it in your car because things will start to melt. And
That's how we know.
and we know because it's happened to us, so don't do that.
One quick thing. A lot of the EVA foam, like, people sell patterns for it now. So if you want to do like Amazon armor from Wonder Woman, people are selling patterns for it out of EVA foam. Just buy the pattern.
Yeah, cut out the pieces, glue them together, as they say, done.
Yeah.
So it's cosplay has come a huge way since we started. I mean, first of all, the internet was sadly like barely there when I started, but now it's all online. There's YouTube tutorials on everything you could possibly think of. They're actually, most of them, fairly well done. It'll just walk you through, okay, you want to make this, boom, 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 boom. Here's the pattern, here's where you get the materials, etc. So it's great.
And EVA foam is available at like hardware stores, Harbor Freight. You can also buy it online. You can buy rolls of it on Amazon. So they're all pretty readily available materials.
Okay, the next tech thing is kind of not as known, but we wanted to throw it out there because it's also a very user-friendly product. It's called X30 Expanding Foam. It's available at Tap Plastic, and it's a 2-part liquid. It's chemicals, so read all the safety instructions where you take A and B, 2 different kinds of liquid, pour them together, and within seconds it foams up like 30 times the amount of the liquid and then dries rigid within 30 seconds maybe?
You gotta work fast.
Yeah, you do it in small batches, you gotta work fast. But the great part about this foam is not only can you pour it wherever you want it, but it's super, super sandable and it's really, really fine. So if you ever tried to sand styrofoam and it does not work, it breaks off in chunks and there's all these pits and holes, this is the antithesis of that. It's like super fine and gets this really nice sanded foam thing. So this is how they make cemetery statues for Buffy the Vampire Slayer. They use it a lot in set work because it's also really, really light and really, really sturdy. And don't spill it on your shoe because it'll never come off.
Yes, this is the stuff you want to do outside.
Definitely do in your garage.
No known dissolvable solvent, just FYI. Ask me how my garage floor knows. So, okay, the next is Owens Corning Foam Mular. It's actually now hard to find.
Harbor Freight has it.
It does?
Yeah.
Oh, because I actually look, okay, well, all right. So it's easy to find places where it snows. It's the, you know, the big fluffy pink insulation that you put in your attic? It's what people in snow use, where it comes in giant sheets and it's rigid and you put it on the outside of your house. It's still an insulation product, but it's really hard to find in California now. And they found out that we're using it for crafting, so they sell it in much smaller pieces for way more.
We used to get it in like 10-foot tall sheets,
Yeah.
and now it's like 3 by 3.
For half the price of the 10 by 20, you know, like, oh, great. So, but it's yet again super, super hard, super fine, really easy to sand, where you can basically glue stacks to make these giant shoes where we just cut it the approximate shape, glued a whole bunch of them together, and then carved and sanded them into the shoe shape, and then covered them with a thing we're not going to talk about now.
A lot of people use this stuff for like giant weapons and
Yeah.
The
props.
cloud swords are mostly made of this stuff.
Yeah,
But
if
it's super light, so.
How are we doing on time? Okay, so a couple of tips on construction. So after you've made all your costume pieces, how are you gonna putting it on, stuff like that? Okay, a big one we have is anchor your costume pieces. What that means is like make sure everything is in place and doesn't move around too much when you're walking around. So like, okay, you know, like, have you guys ever watched Star Trek: The Next Generation?
Well,
Okay, so
you
the
were
captain,
not born
every
yet.
time he would stand up, he would do this little shirt tug thing, right? And like, it's called Picarding, and it's the actual costume term. Like, you know, where like you have to mess with your costume every time you get up to pose or every time you get up to move. Okay, well they have wardrobe people that run after them and take care of their stuff. You don't have that generally out there. So when you have to like stop and pose for a photo, photographers get a little like, you know, they get a little antsy when you just sit there and futz all your costume pieces into place. So we suggest you kind of anchor everything in place. So for an example, on this costume here, he's got snaps that hold the shirt to the pants, so when he poses it, the shirt doesn't pull out. He's got snaps that hold the vest to the pants, so that doesn't move. The belt is Velcroed in place. So then when he strikes a pose like this, and then he gets up to walk away, I don't have to run after him and fix everything, because I don't have time for that.
So it's like a Jedi costume. It has all those layers, and it can look like tragic bathrobe real fast. But you know, if you have everything snapped together, or even safety pins,
even, you know,
it stays. All the layers stay where they're supposed to.
Yeah, so that's a big one. Build around comfortable shoes. I mean, you know, if you can't, you can't. But like, your life will be a lot happier if your shoes are comfortable. Do a trial run. We used to call this panel "Do as we say, not as we do," because we're really bad at this one. Try to do everything, like try to put everything on beforehand so you can see how it looks, because you know, you don't want to be in like the parking lot and suddenly discover that something doesn't work, because we did that today and that was very sad.
Don't do that. Do it at home, not in the parking lot at the event, just FYI.
We suggest you wear makeup. You don't have to, but what happens with a lot of these like cons is the lighting is really low. So then people end up using the flashes on their cameras, and then you get washed out. So if you put on a little bit of makeup, a little bit of eyeliner, a little bit of lipstick, it actually helps your face just show up a lot better, especially because a lot of these costumes too are super bright, and then your face gets really washed out. Wigs does not equal hair. What that is wigs are pretty cheap now. You can get pretty decent ones, you know, like on Amazon, on eBay, at the Halloween store, but they're not hair, so you can do things to them that you can't do with your hair. Like you can put glue in them, you can sew things in, and it's a lot faster, especially for complicated hairdos, to just throw on a wig versus having to do your own hair. So wigs are awesome. Make and bring an emergency kit. You know, I mean, you could just duct tape, safety pins, those kind of things.
5-minute epoxy.
There's no shame in any of this.
And actually what's really cool is a lot of the cons now will actually have someone, either a station with all these supplies, or there'll actually be someone running around with like cosplay repair kits, which is totally cool. And Google is your friend. How did we ever survive without Google? Like you can Google anything and everything. And I mean, unless your costume is like so obscure that, you know, they're not doing it in the US, there's probably someone out there that's making it and like posting progress photos, which is awesome. So you can check and see what they did and see, you know, like how they did it, if you like what choices they made, all that stuff.
Yeah, one thing we like to do when we're starting a project is we Google the costume to see what other people have done, because that's a good indicator, like art versus real life.
Like what you can accomplish, what you can get away with.
What works, what doesn't.
Yeah, it's your initial homework, and you haven't bought anything yet, so it's just like, all right, will this work on me? And then that's a good starting point.
Okay. This is how that person solved the problem of gravity. Did I like how he did it, or do I want to try something else?
So tips for wearing. So you've done all this work, and how do you do this and not hate your costume 5 minutes into wearing it?
Or people.
Yes. Our number one tip is bring a friend. Ideally a friend who maybe isn't in as complicated. If you're in a complicated costume and you have a friend who's in a less complicated costume, that's like bonus, because your less complicated costume friend gets to be the one that helps you when you have to go to the bathroom. This is super great. Bathroom is great.
About this.
Hide your badge for photos. This is a big one. When you're walking around the convention, especially because if you work so hard on something, or even if you just spent the money on something, and your badge is hanging like right here, then it's in all your photos. Tie it to the back, tie it to your bag, you know, make sure it's tied pretty tightly so that it doesn't fall out. But that's something to keep in mind when you're walking around a convention center. Stand up straight. That seems like I'm gonna sound like your mom, but stand up straight for photos. You know, you're in this character, and you're awesome, and you're cool, and you spent all this time or money or effort putting it in, and you're finally wearing it. So don't slouch. Feel free to practice your poses. This is the fun part. You put your costume on, you stand in front of the mirror, and you're like, I'm a warrior, or I'm a schoolgirl that's awesome, or whatever else. Like, practice your poses and have fun, you know? And it also makes for interesting stuff when after the con and you're looking for photos, then you don't have the same pose for all of them.
Or I shouldn't have stood like that.
Yeah, yeah. It's okay to say no to photos. When you're in costume, you have to be aware of yourself. So if you start to get tired, if you need to run to the bathroom, and some photographer or some fan comes up to you and says, "Can I take a picture?" Feel free to say, "You know, I have to go to a panel, or I have to go to the bathroom real quick." Don't feel pressured to do anything in costume that you wouldn't do normally. That's really big. If someone wants to come up to you and give you a hug and you're just like, you know, just say no. Just like, hey, you know, this is really delicate, or I worked really hard on this. I'd rather you not touch anything. That's totally fine. Stay hydrated. Again, you're running around, especially because most cons are in the summer. Usually these costumes aren't really wearable friendly sometimes, so stay hydrated. This bonus if you have a friend who carries your water for you.
Passing out is bad.
Yes.
Yeah. Passing out is very bad. You might hurt your costume.
Yeah. And finally, know your limits. If it's your first time wearing stiletto heels for this awesome costume and your toes start to go numb, take a break. Take the shoes off. Go back to your car or your hotel or whatever and say, you know what, I wore it for an hour, that's great, we're done. Really, the fundamental part about cosplay is to have fun. You don't want to get injured, you don't want to have, you know, pain anywhere like after the fact. So know your limits in advance.
Yeah, you won't have fun at the con if you're in the hospital, the little first aid tent. Another thing is, it took us 10 years to get this point, put pockets in your costumes. Very important. If you're making them, you can put a pocket in.
For years and years when we didn't have costumes, your friend or your significant other is a very good pack mule.
Yeah. And even if you can't do a pocket, like make a pouch and like.
This is the best idea I have ever come up with.
It only
I have
took
a
her like
wand
20
pocket.
years, okay?
Because this is a real pain to carry all day, and it won't fit in a pocket, but I have a wand pocket now.
20 years, guys.
Yeah.
It's okay, you got 20 years to remember the pockets.
Yes. So something to keep in mind too is that we're constantly learning new techniques and stuff. We're definitely not experts, but the amount of resources that you can find online and the cosplay community as a whole is really, really good about sharing.
Yeah.
Don't expect someone to like email you full-on directions of something, but if you had like a specific question about like, oh, you know, I really like your Wonder Woman sword, can you give me a tip on XYZ? 9 times out of 10, I think people will give you like either advice or point you to somewhere where they can help.
Yeah, like, oh, I used this tutorial here, or oh, I got the materials there. But yeah, don't be the, how did you make your costume? Please give me detailed photos and step-by-step instructions.
Yeah.
Well, you're probably not going to get a response, but you know, people, it is a really great community. Yes, there's individual jerks, but for the most part, people are really eager to share and, you know, get more people into their love of the same hobby.
So now we'd like to open it up for questions, whether it be construction related, if you have a costume idea. We also have some prizes for people who ask questions, so you should ask questions. And yes, so say.
How did you make your wigs? How do you make your wigs stand up?
Like this. I bought it and it came this way. Here is but I will give you more information, but here is a free 90-day trial to Crunchyroll, one of our sponsors. This is from Arta Wigs, which is a wig company that's specifically for cosplayers. And they do really good of basic shapes for different styles of popular characters. Obviously, this isn't the fairy godmother wig. It's actually the Sherlock wig. But it works for a fairy godmother. It comes in tons of colors. I remember when we had 6 colors.
The hairspray wig.
Yeah, we used spray paint. Doesn't really work that well, by the way. But the nice part about wigs is they're not hair. So depending on the type of wig, you can set these with glue. Like if you want a little curl, you can wrap it around take a curler, like a hard plastic curler, cover it with wax paper or some other nonstick product, and then wrap the hair around it, then coat it in clear glue and let it dry. And then you get your little curls. Some wigs you can set with heat, not a curling iron because those are too hot, but you can wrap it in a curler and then douse it with slowly hotter boiling water to see where it'll set, how hot it needs to get to set,
Some
or
of them
blow
will set
dry.
with a blow dryer. So
So-
you heat it up, and then you wait for it to cool before you remove the curler, because it needs to cool down to hold it, and then you take
Well,
it out.
there's a lot more.
The hairspray of choice for most wig people is the what is it? Got to be. It's like this yellow can. You can buy it at Walgreens. It's like Got to Be Spike It or something. It's like spray on glue essentially.
Spray on Elmer's.
Yeah.
Yeah, hairspray doesn't necessarily work with wigs, just FYI. It's chemically bonded to work with human hair, not plastic. So,
Okay. I don't. Yeah, but you.
I'm actually making my own Halloween costume, and like I kind of gotta like stabilize it hoop up, but I'm not quite sure how to do that.
Where's the hoop go?
What are you making?
I'm making a shower.
Oh.
Oh.
Okay.
Okay. So you need the hoop to sit up here, right?
yeah.
Because I don't know quite how to stabilize it.
It's the Halloween costume.
So I would assume that if you attach, a rod to the back of your belt, and then that goes up, and then the hoop attaches to the rod going up like a PVC rod.
I've already done that. Just I'm using a backpack instead. But
Okay.
like when I like connect it to the poles up here,
Uh-huh.
just see.
Yeah.
Oh, so the front is
So you need a rod coming from the front, like, if you have a waistband on your backpack. Because whenever you have something big and unwieldy, 2 points of attachment, because if you have one, it'll wonk or it'll turn side to side. But if you have one coming from the front as well, it'll help keep it from moving. You can also maybe attach it to
Alternatively, if you already have a PVC pipe coming up back, get like a Y connector. So you have the one coming up here, and then you have a Y coming out that way. So you have 1, 2, 3 to hold the hoop up. So that way it's not, if you don't want something right in front of you.
Yeah, that would get kind of annoying.
Yeah. But you just, like Judy said, you need at least 2 points so that it doesn't droop. So either another one coming out from the side of you or in the front. Yeah. Thanks. Judy, you pick. Oh, no.
Okay.
Someone pick.
He's been taping us.
I got a two-part question.
Sure.
Oh, dear.
I think you guys brought up that you guys have like a website or something.
Oh my God, is that not on here?
It is.
Oh, it's right there. It's at the bottom right there.
It's whatishcc.com.
And the second part is, last week I was at another con, and there was like a panel about children that do cosplaying, and the parents, talk about their concerns about it. Like say like the person that takes their photos, and like where do their photos like end up? Are any of you ever like worried about like putting your children into cosplay?
Right. So I've got 2 little girls. They're not here today because they're at the birthday party. But so that is a big one. If you have kids, and even just you in general, when you're out there taking photos, you have to realize that these photos are basically kind of become public property. You can't really control where they go. Even if you say no to photos, people are going to get you in the background. And then these photos end up out there, and they're everywhere. So I know it's not something that everyone wants to hear, but you can't really control that. And if you're going to dress up, you're going to get asked for photos, and your kids are going to get asked for photos. So my solution for my kids is that I don't nowhere online do I have their legal names. So you can take a photo of them, but and we've had newspapers take photos of them. I just don't give the name out ever. I refer to them as the larva and the grub online.
They're going to have issues when they're old enough to realize what those words mean.
So that's how that's how I'm getting around it, because I know people are going to take photos of them, and they love dressing up. Like, you can't,
And they love posing. It's so cute.
Let's do 2 more questions. So, you in the wig? Yeah.
Personal question for all 3 of you. How much do you hate fake pockets?
How much?
Do I hate fake pockets?
Oh my god.
Oh, we hate them terribly. They're like the bane of all female fashion existence.
Well, what do you mean by fake pockets? Like on costumes when you put fake pockets?
Oh.
Oh, on costumes, we fake everything. We
Yeah.
don't even make real buttonholes, because buttonholes are really hard. Like, I sew on the buttons and then I put snaps behind, because who has time for buttonholes?
Yeah.
Like,
Or like a fake front,
we fake everything.
Yeah.
multiple layers. It's really just one layer with.
It's not a real piece of item clothing. You can fake whatever you need.
So you get a certificate too. And then I think you next to her? Yeah.
What's the best way to take care of the wig when you don't have enough room?
How to do what?
Take care of the wig and like keep it safe, but you put it in a place that doesn't exactly have enough room.
If it's a really long wig, is that what you're asking? So what I do is I tie it off every half foot or so. I take ribbon and I tie it so it doesn't get all tangled, and then I roll it up and I bag it. I don't have a lot of room, so everything goes into bins.
Yeah.
Okay. Sadly, I think we're out of time. Okay, I'm sorry.
So
But
there are, oh, go ahead.
we have posters for everyone over here.
Yes.
Yay.
Thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
Our website is whatishcc.com. If you see us, feel free to ask us questions, but thank you. Yeah. Yeah. Well, plus, the thing is, too, like, if you, most of the beer conventions now, you buy a badge to be okay to do
That's a good question.
My first
I'll
time.
think of another answer.
Okay.
But I mean,
What the costume I want to